You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here. The man, the myth, the legend.
Boom.
How often, okay, let's out the gate. How often do you get spotted as like, hey, it's AfroBrutality?
This is a terrible question to answer, but I will. So it started years ago, man. We went into the fucking Garden State Mall. I don't know if you know fucking New York City, Jersey like that. So it's in Jersey, right? So we go in, Garden State Mall. We go into my favorite store, which is Oakley. And the guy comes behind the fucking counter and he's like, he just stares at me. He's like, "Are you Sid?" I said, "Yeah." Now, beautiful enough, my son was with me. So he's eating this shit up and then we walk out of there with free shit. And that was like 10 years ago. So now it's terrible, dude. Now we went to get a barber. I took my son to my barber, which is on like 140th and Broadway. And he's in the barber chair and he's looking outside and someone walks by with my shirt on. And he's like, "Dad, there's your shirt." I said, "Yeah, it's, just relax. It's okay." Then we leave and I'm getting attacked. I say attacked, but I'm getting, "Hey, can I get a picture?" And I just got out of the fucking barber shop. So it's so much so that if you notice, I'm not even wearing my own shit. Like I wear other people's shit just to make sure that if you know who I am, you know who I am. If I gotta wear some fucking AfroBrutality for you to know who I am, then it's not even worth me talking to you.
So
and I started that years ago.
Run it back. Like how did it start? Like where was the first idea for that to kick off? Like what was the origin story of that? How did that come to be? Like how did you become so synonymous? Because I remember I had a thing where I had my Instagram account and there was a moniker, and then I graduated. I was like, should I change it? And everyone's like, you're kind of known for it now. You can't really change it. I was like, fuck, I should have thought into this. So, like, when was that point where you're like, all right, because you are the brand, and the brand is you. Like, anyone who's listened to any of your stuff, like that is they're one and the same, which makes the brand direction so easy because it's just like it's
easy.
It's
whatever I'm going through, it is what it is.
Exactly. So we'll run it back. Like, where did this idea start?
That's a great question. Well, it's when I got into CrossFit. When I officially got into CrossFit in 2008, we were just renegades. So we'd go to every single CrossFit event and just destroy it. I'd either be first or second, or my team would be third or first or second. And I just wanted us to walk in with like some real energy, dude. Like some real, we're about to just ruin whatever day you thought you were going to have. So that's where it started. And I was used to doing that before I even got into fitness events and shit. I was used to just walking in. People knew who I was. And it was like, people are afraid to talk to me or whatever. And then the ones that did would get all the love. So I just kind of used that. And then came the logo, the skull with an afro, with the afro pick, with the middle finger. And we just ran it as much as we could. And when I made that logo, I also put CrossFit Harlem on the front and I put AfroBrutality on the back. When that happened, it was like the world had just changed for just a little minute. For about 15 minutes, the world was different. And everyone recognized that there were black people in let's say indigenous, right? There was black people in inner city that actually did CrossFit and were very good at it. So that changed the world for a little minute. But right there, when I had to lessen what I considered to be CrossFit and increase what I considered to be something that was a lot more tangible for me, which was AfroBrutality, I said, I really tried to put it on my team. Like, okay, you go do this, you go do that, you do this. But I was Dr. Dre the whole time. And I had to say, well, either I'm going to do this 100% the way I would do it, or I'm going to have to rely on other people. So I just took the reins and did what I could to make sure when you saw that word, when you thought about that logo, I was synonymous with both.
So has it been difficult, like as you expanded and collaborated, like massive brands like Puma comes to mind, has it been difficult in those types of situations where it's like, a brand like Puma, which is a world-renowned brand, when they come to you and be like, hey, do they come and say, hey, do whatever you want? Or like, how does that collaboration work when you made a conscious decision to be like, no, the only way this works is if it's sin through and through. And the next, you're not going to say no to when Puma comes knocking on the door. What was that conversation like?
That was, shouts to Puma. They accepted me as is, and I came in like, I talk like this, I dress like this, well, Sin, we knew who you were when we came. Okay, cool. You know, it it became too much because I couldn't change designs I didn't like. So I had two designs that were coming out Juneteenth of last year, and I didn't like them. And it wasn't that I didn't like them personally. I realized that I was using a lot of heritage. I was using a lot of language that no one was used to other than people in Harlem and my inner circle. And I said, they looked at me like, well, why are you talking our language to the world? And I said, well, I've seen lesser people do it. Why can't I be myself and do this? So it became bigger than what I was used to. I was used to underground, do what I want, don't like something, cut it. You wouldn't even know half the designs, some of them I made that never even saw the light of day because I didn't like them. And then some did see the light of day because I did like them. And some saw the light of day because other people liked them. But when you're at that type of stage, all eyes are on you. Everyone's counting your money. Everyone's looking at what you're doing. Everyone's saying you're this and that based on this and based on that. So it put a light on the underground. It put the light on what I had created on the underground. And I couldn't control it. I couldn't control the narrative. I'd asked for, get me on this blog, get me with this guy, get me with this. And because it was at the height of COVID, a lot of things were shut down. A lot of people were not in a position to be, in front of your face talking one-on-one. So it was, okay, I can't do this. And then, the sneakers didn't come out when they were supposed to, and the designs were like, So I said, you know what, let's just separate our ways and let's donate my capsule. So I ended up donating my Puma capsule to some football teams, like K through 12 in Brooklyn, which is interesting that you brought that up.
Did you feel added pressure just given like the state of the world around race in the last couple of years?
It's still there, dude. I haven't really been able to say what I want to say. And it's because I hit a vein that takes time for that blood to get to the brain. Like, it's not dopamine. It's more like apple cider vinegar. You know what I mean? It's going to cut through a lot of shit and release a lot of shit. But people have to be ready. They have to be ready, or I come through as the Antichrist, and that's not something I really wanted to do. So I've been taking it, listening, surveying, talking to people, including yourself. This will be a good test market to see where people are at when it comes to race. I've never had an issue with race. I've dealt with racism firsthand in all kinds of different ways, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid to be about it. I'm not afraid to say this is right versus this is wrong. So I don't know where the state of world is with that, but I ain't fucking changed.
I always tell the story. I was in the Bahamas once, and I got pulled over. I was walking, and I got pulled over, but by two Bahamian police officers. And I'm just like, I'm translucent. Like, I'm the whitest thing that Nassau, Bahamas has ever seen. And I remember, it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day because I live in Dubai now and I'm a visible minority everywhere I go. I'm usually a foot taller than everyone else and probably like, I don't know, 70 pounds heavier than the next guy. And I love being a visible minority because it helps lend some perspective. And I literally remember back to Bahamas, it was August 2018. And these two cops pulled me over, and it was like a really nice neighborhood. My client had a really nice house, and I dressed like I should not be in this neighborhood. And they like pulled these two Bahamian dudes, these two black dudes, like pulled up next to me, was like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hello," and they're like, "Are you lost?" And I just started laughing, and I'm like, "Oh, I get it." And they started laughing. And then they just left me alone. I was like, oh, that's a really shoes on the other foot. But like, I didn't even think. And I was so happy that they were literally doing it as a joke.
Right.
They're like, oh, we're just going to roll up on this white kid in the most stereotypical way. And then I was just like, oh no. And then they laughed. I was like, oh, thank God. Like, because especially around Juneteenth, like for a release to be out of your full control. For a platform.
Forget about it, dude. I tell you, I was sort of disappointed, and I did what I could because I realized that my point of view when it comes to black culture, white culture, and the mixture of both, it's just fucking unique, dude. And I never wanted to be able to have to say that. I never had to want to be able to say, you know what? I grew up in the suburbs, dude. I didn't grow up in Harlem. I didn't grow up in Brooklyn. I didn't grow up in the Bronx. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston. And we're talking, we were the first black family in the towns we were in, period.
Come on.
And that, period. Period. I'm talking 76, 77, 78. So when we walked in, it was, well, where did y'all come from? Or, oh my God, it's good to see you. So when growing up like that, dude, that was 76 to about 82. And we're talking cops would see me, drive me home. Hey, you're out too late. Let's take you home. Take you home. There was no necessarily racism at that time in that way because they were dealing with that shit in Boston. They were trying to segregate schools in Boston. You got kids unsafe to go to school, white kids, black kids, all this. So on the other side of town, they would just only had to deal with me, and we were homeowners, so it was just a different energy, dude. But to go from that to say, because I got exposure to, let's say, the black community through Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, those places when I wanted to get a haircut or date a chick or something like that. And became harder and harder to leave those places to come back to a house next to a pond or a house, next to a marsh or, kids celebrating the fact that I was black versus kids being discriminated because of the fact that they were black. So I didn't get the taste of being discriminated when I was black until we moved to Texas. And we went to Round Rock, Texas, which is right outside of Austin, where they have Dell, I believe, has their headquarters there still. And damn near first day, it was like, what you doing here, my man? What's good? I said, well, I live right here, going to the store.
How old are you at
What can
this
I
time?
tell you? Man, I was 10, maybe 11 or 12, MTV era. So the kids I did vibe with were watching MTV all day. The real issue became when you're the only of something in a neighborhood filled with something else, everyone wants every stereotype to be explained by you. Like, please
Like you're an
explain your
elected
hair.
official.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a diplomat now
Right.
for the black community. Hello, whether I wanted to be or not. And they just watch my ways and actions and things like that. But the biggest lesson I learned in Round Rock was how to deal with racism. So I had about 5 to 6 white kids that just wanted to push me around and bully me because the girls would talk about me in class, talk about me in the bathroom, leave notes in my locker, all this. So most of them were jocks in football, on the football team. So I joined the football team, had my top 5 list, and I'll never forget that first hut. And we were just doing practice, and we're doing left ring, right wing, left wing, this and that. So I saw my guy way to the right. I'm on the left, hike. I went and laid him out. And then I just told him while he's laying there, I'm like, listen, the girls like me. There's not much I could do about that. So why don't you just back off? And then I went to the next one, same thing, bam. And I didn't care if it was practice. I didn't care if it was a scrimmage. I don't give a fuck. Like, I had my top 5, and I talked to each one of them individually on their field while they're laying down, eating dirt, and it was settled. By that, I was settled. I had my top 5, and I got out of there. I was only on the team for about a month. Turned in all my pads and everything. Says, I'm done here. Oh, well, you were good or this or that. But that's how I deal with racism head on, man. I don't shy from it. I don't walk around it. I hit it straight on. But when it becomes on a corporate level, when it's, let's say, corporation versus corporation, or so, when it goes from a personal level to a corporation level, it's harder. It's harder. It gets to the point like, am I going to sue this person? Am I going class action? What am I doing? Because they've clearly made their stance. I've always had my stance. There's no synergy here. What are we doing next? And that's when it becomes a little tougher.
Well, that was when I first started following you was around, and I remember watching a few podcasts was around the time that like CrossFit had some let's call them PR issues, because that's what my PR department would like me to say. Like they had issues back. This was well before they started
2020
campaigns like Outward and things like that. But you simultaneously, or maybe a little bit before, you can clarify the timeline, were pairing with NYPD CrossFit. And you became a fitness, racial CrossFit commentator in the most unique way that no one else did.
And let me tell you, I've been doing that job since 2010, 11 or 12, unofficially. So there was one, and you can research this. This is 2012. There was a new blogger that had just got onto the CrossFit media team, and he sent out a link that said, "Why don't more blacks do CrossFit?" And in that particular article, I was mentioned 2 or 3 times. Well, this guy knows what he's doing. Look what this guy is doing. They reference me. They reference my website and the things that I've done. And I got calls from NPR News, AP, you name it. They were like, because what happened was the guy that actually put that article together was somehow tied in with the KKK or skinheads or something like that. So these guys out of fucking Canada, which is where they were running the media team at the time, they're calling me. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? And I did everything I could to put the soft lenses on this, to put the soft gloves, because I'll tell you, man, and this might be the first time I said this, like, when you're raised to believe that white people, let's say, are the opposition, or they're the ones that are going to take away your ability to make money, or they are going to take away your ability to feel free or a sense of freedom. You grow up with a sense that, man, you better be on site when you see these guys, on site. So living in Harlem is comfortable. I don't run across many white people, or however you want to see that. So I didn't have that. But growing up with that opposite opposition, where it's like, in Boston, they're getting treated with discrimination. I'm being treated like, wow, you made it out. Glad to have you in our neighborhood. I grew up with that. And you got to understand, that's sort of where my synapses are when it comes to white people being the opposition. I just don't see it. Is it a challenge in some areas? Of course. Is there racism? Of course. But it's usually ignorance. Like it's not usually like some fucking PhD Einstein guy that's talking this genealogy shit. It's usually some guy that's dealing with some childhood trauma, or probably never even met a black person, let alone actually sat down and had dinner with them. So I didn't come in with that. So when I get calls about, racism or racial or this or that, I can sit down super even keel. Let me hear what you got to say. Let me hear what you got to say. And when I dealt with that shit, I listened to everything that they had to say. And I said, well, this is our best course of action. Let's do this. Let's do that. Wasn't paid for it, and did it the same way I did NYPD. I've been training NYPD for 14 years, dude, like quietly. Like that's why they called me. They were like, well, Sin, you clearly figured this out. This is about community. This is about racial tension, and we can use fitness as a way to diffuse that. Agreed. Let's go. And we did several events to show that could happen. But the mere fact that I could be at the level I am in terms of racial interaction, in terms of racial unity, and still be able to say, okay, NYPD, you're not perfect, but I can go in there and tell you how to change some things. Community, black community or whatever community, it's not perfect. But what are we going to do? Defund the police, which they tried, didn't work, whatever. The point is this, like, I come into these situations even keeled, dude. I don't lean towards anything. I listen to the truth, and then I run off that.
Well, you said something interesting, because you were talking about race, and then you said this community, like racial communities or other communities. Because I've always wondered, historically in North America, that racism has been a main divide. As hopefully we've worked towards bridging that divide, we've started to fraction out other divides, like homosexual community. I lived in San Francisco for 7 years. That's a big community. And people always try and make equivalencies to previously or lesser marginalized groups. Have you ever come across emerging marginalized groups that look to you for, because you were like, you really spearheaded the initiative and you took it head on. How do you feel when other groups, because, sport now, and you said it when you were a kid, right? You could go out on the football field in Texas, you could catch a kid with his head down running a slant route, and he's like, "We got problems? No, all right, coach, I'm out." But it was fair, right? Like it was a proving
was
ground. Like,
fair.
there's historical precedent for sport being like, "Hey, let's play sports so we don't play war instead." How do you feel now with like marginalized groups in sports now? Like, you know, obviously there's like that swimmer that in the NCAA that was
Right, the transsexual,
male.
I believe.
Yeah. And then, but like also in CrossFit, right? CrossFit's been they've done a 180 from 2015 when I believe they said, like one of their attorneys said that we're not discriminating. We just know grade 10 biology. And then they come out the next year and they're very open to other groups. Have you had other groups reach out to you as you have become sort of like the outward facing spokesperson for your group in CrossFit?
The short answer is yes. And I was part of, so the transsexual that went into the open, I believe was 2014. And her name is Chloe. She got outed for being transsexual, but coming in saying that she was a woman. So, you know, the powers that be went, you know, in on her and this and that and talked about this and that and this and that. But when I was going to be at the CrossFit Games in 2014 as a vendor, I got a call from her directly because we knew some people in common. And she's like, you know, I'm going to be there. Can you just watch over me? I said, of course, of course. And encouraged the shit out of her to talk about this. Like, if you don't agree and there's other people on your side, just talk about it. So she started taking the ESPN interviews and different covers of magazines and stuff like that. Outward the same. Now, with Chloe and Outward, I know these people. We all know each other. And when Outward was coming out and it became the Out Foundation and this and that, I supported everything they do. Listen, I support almost any human being. I don't really give a fuck. Like, okay, you want to do this with your personal time and you want to be categorize this in your personal, I don't care. Like, who am I to sit there and say, oh, you can't say you're this or say you're that? Like, I don't care, man. But yes, other people have started coming to me asking advice on this or what do I do with this or what do I do with that. Out Foundation, they figured it out pretty much on their own. And I just supported some of their events because there was a guy I went to the gym with for years. I had no idea his orientation. And then tragically, I think he was in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan, and come to find out he was like a soldier plus like FY fire department as well. Like, I had no idea. So there's been commonality and we've gone back and forth with that. But, you know, I stay in my little square, dude. Like, I don't try to get outside of it, but it's amazing when you stand for something how many people will just stand with you or stand alongside you or push you alongside what you're doing. It's literally amazing, dude. So everyone, to a certain extent, is asked questions about this and that, especially when it comes to the sport itself.
What's the feeling that comes along with, you know, the fact that you've just stood your ground for so long and have been sort of like, you know, unequivocal when it comes to your stance on things? Because it must be strange to think that you're at a point where just by being you for so long that someone in a position like that, which must feel so isolating, can come to you and be like, do you look around and be like, holy shit, like, how did I get here? I'm just a guy that says what's on my mind. Like, that's
all the time.
You almost have a responsibility. It almost like, it seems like there'd be a weight with that.
It's 100%. It's 100%. It's 100%. That's why when I took the position I did with, you know, a brand like Puma, I was like, okay, I don't think this is working. Let's just, you know, separate our ways and go about our days. Because if I say something, people are going to say it as well. If I do something, they're going to do it as well. So I had to pull back and say, okay, if someone else was in a similar position as mine, would they take the same responsibility or would they just go for the money? And I didn't go for the money. And people, especially my cops, were like, saying you didn't go for the money? I was like, nah, man, I couldn't. Like, if the money was not going to trickle down to the corporations I worked with or the community-based organizations I worked with, and I worked very hard to get all of them, not necessarily contracts with Puma, but at least a friendly face there. So if they wanted something or had an idea for a team or needed something or a sponsor or whatever, that they could use that as a resource. And it wasn't something I could just transfer. It wasn't an ability I could transfer. It wasn't a responsibility I could transfer. I had to funnel it. And my son got tired of going to the Puma store, but I'm like, okay, there's some kids over at, this basketball camp that need shoes. Let's go. Let's go. There's football players. Let's go. So, I wanted less of let's go and more of let's send it to them, right? I wanted more of, let's not take Sin's day and make him have to organize everything because that's what he does. Let's help him in that regard. And it was like any other relationship. It was, we were just dating, you know what I mean? And then finally we went out for dinner, so it was that kind of relationship. And I took it for granted that they just knew I was, and they were going to stand behind me 100% regardless of what I did. They still wanted some checks and balances for that.
Do you have any, because you mentioned like the awareness of your influence when saying like, look, if I say something, people are going to pop off and start saying this. Like if I do something, people are going to follow suit. What were some pivotal moments you think in your career, as like again, this fitness racial commentator, but it's just basically a way to describe you. What were some, can you pinpoint some pivotal moments where like you started to realize like, oh, okay, like, I gotta, I not necessarily check myself, but like, I need to make sure that
I'll give you a few. My first suicide note. So I got a DM, man, it must have been 6 years ago. I got a DM. I saved them from suicide or something like that. I'm just summarizing. When I saw that, I was like, whoa. That was like, okay, we are now scheduled to Instagram post at 9 in the morning, 9 at night, regardless to whom or what. We didn't know who we were saving. We didn't know what we were changing. We didn't know whose life we were impacting. And I say we, but I mean, I had no fucking clue, dude. That was the first one. Then Puma's approach. I was just like, whoa, like, man, motherfuckers is really listening to this shit. Like, I can't just pop off the way I wanted to, I want to. I'm just used to doing. I mean, that was big as well. And then the calls, once, Glassman, or however you want to say, once, the powers that be said what they said, it became, we got to call Sin, see what's he thinking? What are we doing? And dude, I couldn't, my phone was ringing for a month straight. I mean, ringing, text messages, we're talking 100 to 200, sometimes 300 a day. Like, I mean, I didn't understand it. Like, it didn't make sense. But then I had to sit down and try to really focus on branding and understanding what my messaging was and being clear. I had to go back and look and say, man, I'm really telling motherfuckers to fuck off a little too much. Let me tune that down and say, well, fuck off on Monday. Tuesday, get a hug. Wednesday, fuck your girl. Like, whatever. Like, those pivotal moments were to the point where I said, okay, I can't just be some guy popping off. I really have to be about something, be very clear and concise in what I say and how I say it and when I say it. So those are two or three of the most and examples that I had. I was like, man, I can't just say anything. I got to be super clear on what I'm saying and why.
How many people must reach out to you for advice on like the branding side, advice on the business side, like to just be a voice with black text on white tile or white text on black tile? But that's because that dude, like, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but you seem to be saying a lot with less than like 20 words on an Instagram post. You're also using Instagram like Twitter, and you're just putting, but because here's the thing, it's like you take the best tools of a platform away from someone and you still find a way to be successful. Like there's an inherent value to whatever's driving that engine that I think if anyone was in a position to build a brand, you'd be someone who'd be very insightful to talk to, because with a robust platform, you're like, I'm just going to put out words on tiles and I'm going to switch it up every day. And that's it. Like, what advice, what questions do you get asked most often? And what advice do you find yourself giving most often?
So I would say I was getting so many calls at one time. I was trying to use a few people to create a funnel system so that we can figure out the difference between the ones that are good and ones that were bad, and do what I can to help. But it's always, how do I get started? And then it's always, what pushes me to continue every day, like, that sort of thing. And I would tell any person just to find as much unique about themselves as they possibly can. Some people think what's unique about them is common to everyone else, and it's just not. So I would say, as people are trying to understand themselves and becoming an influencer, if that's something that you really want. I didn't necessarily want to become an influencer. I wanted to make sure the shit I posted made sense and made a difference, right? And I just went for some of that basic concept, you know what I mean? Black on white or white on black. Like, that's just who I am, dude. Like, my brain is probably half white, half black, you know what I mean? It's like a whole yin-yang symbol right in my brain, and I love that space. But that was most of the common stuff. How did I get started? Why did I continue? What were some pivotal moments? I mean, when I really embraced, because I'm answering my own question, when I really embraced the fact that I talk a certain way, I dress a certain way, I just am a certain way, and I said, I'm just not going to change it. I'm going to figure out a way to enhance that. That made the difference between, let's say, I don't know, 5,000 followers on Instagram to 100,000. Like, when you really embrace who you are and say, listen, I don't necessarily care if people agree or disagree, as long as I understand my plan and I understand where I'm going to and how I'm going to get there, and I'm not going to compromise no matter how much money comes my way, no matter what opportunities come my way, dude. Because I'll tell you, I could have took that Puma deal and went to sleep. I could have went right to sleep, dude. Listen, boxes were showing up every day. Like, I could have went to sleep. And I said, wait a minute, did I do all this to become a product? Did I do all this to, like, become, let's say this or that? Now I'm in line. Now I'm sponsored by this. Or no, I didn't. I did that to show other people that they could do it too. I did this to show other people that it doesn't take a whole lot of hoopla. It doesn't take a whole lot of money. It doesn't take a whole lot of insight. And I also showed that there's the difference between haves and have-nots. Like, you either can do this and you're made to do this, or you just can't. Go do something else. And we're not going to disrespect you, but you might be trying a little too hard. And I watch guys, they try a little too hard. They hide behind that thing a little too much, and they don't do many one-on-ones where they're actually talking to human beings that have less than they do, or none of what they have. You don't see much of that. And regardless of what I was doing and how I was doing it, you would still see me in the streets of Harlem. You'd still see me on the subway. Like, I could have did all kinds of other things, man. But I decided I came from the people. I'm still going to be about the people regardless.
Now, rather than message you give most people most often, you mentioned earlier, and I like the way that you diversified in your mind the way you delivered your content about going like, all right, there's people that are in current states and they have desired states, and maybe the desired state isn't always, like, fuck, let's go get your shit together. Maybe it's like, fuck you on Monday, and then whatever, take your girl out on Tuesday. But like, that's so clever, right? Because so many people just have one message and they reach no one, right? They have, like, if you're a dynamic person, you're going to have these different ebbs and flows, and that's what makes the
Absolutely.
brand so dynamic, is because the person who founded the brand was dynamic. How many of the messages that might not necessarily be for someone who's following, subscribing, listening, whatever, are there messages that you find that you have to tell yourself a lot?
I did during the pandemic. Most of the messages I was posting was for me. Most of that was like, sin, people are looking at you. People are counting on you. What are you going to say? What are you going to do? How do you really feel? And I would switch it up. I would say, I feel like this today. I'm not feeling it today. And then I'd be on some love shit. It was just the duality, or like the complexity of trying to be someone that wants to, like, do as much good as they possibly can, but their resources may be limited. And at that time, all of our resources were limited. So it became me talking to myself, and I wanted people to see that. Like, how does Sin get himself out of a dark place? How does Sin get himself to the next level? Like, what did he do? And it really was, to get to the next level, it was reminding myself who I was, and then going around people and saying, just saying hello and see if I made a difference. Like, hey, what's going on? Calling them up or going to dinner with them or lunch and then catching up with them and realizing, did I make a difference with them or not? And they would say, yeah, Sin, let me introduce you to who? Oh, really? Okay, cool, cool, cool. Because you get stuck in your own little bubble where it's like, everything's roses because you're creating everything around you. But does that smell like roses to the next person? Does that do anything for the next person? And as long as I stay in that space where I'm still myself, still in my bubble, willing to share my bubble through criticism, whatever the case is, it's just going to make me better. And I made sure of that I didn't get too far ahead of myself or too high on myself or too stuck on myself that I couldn't just walk the streets of Harlem, take the goddamn train, and then deal with the same repercussions or same ails that everyone else deals with.
You mentioned earlier, and this kind of dovetails off what you just said. You mentioned earlier that you didn't want to have to deal with like the corporate side of things, and like you didn't want to be held like accountable to the corporate machine. How is it that you have, do you find yourself in a position where you can, or have you judged corporations in the way they've managed racial issues outside of CrossFit? One I'm thinking of in particular, the definitely. Nike Kaepernick ad.
Oh my God.
Like what? Dude, I'd be so interested in your take on that.
Such duality in that. Such duality in that. I'll tell you, I'm looking at the bizarro to the way that I was raised. My mother, was in the other room sneezing, going crazy, right? She has a past that she doesn't necessarily want me to always refer to, but it comes with a stronger message than Black Lives Matter, dude. It came with like power to the people. It came with, this is revolution, or this is time, for this, or there's time for that. So when I look at the Kaepernick, I'm like, okay, this is what society, or this is what people are responding to, bad or good or bad. Because I also grew up in the era when I was in Denver when one of the Denver Nuggets, I can't remember his name, one of those players refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And that might have been 2001 or 97 or something. Like, it was way back. And when it comes to those things like that, it's like, okay, if you don't necessarily want to be a part of this country, that's cool. And if you want to make it a public thing that you don't want to be a part of this, that's cool. Does that mean you don't, you don't vote, you don't use the police, you don't call 911? Like, where does that begin and where does that end? If you are not with any of the rules of this country, cool. There's so many other countries for you. But in terms of the direct Kaepernick, because he had an afro, dude, like I couldn't necessarily.
That was on you. That was, dude. You were waking up to that. There's no way that your morning, the morning after, was like, oh,
you're killing me, dude.
Yeah,
you're killing me.
That's gonna clear Sin's schedule. He's gonna have to
against the grain, dude. You know how many people requested a Kaepernick design and an Obama design? And I'm like,
my God.
I am not getting into your politics, dude. I am Black Sabbath, Tupac. I am fucking Ozzy. I'm not going into all that shit, dude.
That is harder to resist than the money,
dude.
The Puma thing. That is because that's off the backboard. That's a layup. Are you joking me? I could just only imagine your cell phone the morning after that. Or just because, he had it blown out. Like, he had it whole, like, it wasn't tight. He had the whole thing.
Dude, it was all
out.
Dude, those are just potholes. Those are like sinkholes. Those are black holes. Those are like, you can't come back from that, dude. If you stand on that, you're standing on someone else's morals. You're standing on someone else's mission. You're standing on someone else's whatever. And I don't even know this guy. I don't know this guy. Never met him. Don't know anybody that's met him. I got to just take his word for it that he's about this. Because I heard mixed stories. Like, he did it, but he did it for one reason, and it became another reason, which brings you to, like, the Rosa Parks thing. Didn't want to be a civil rights leader. It became, like, this and that. Like, the smallest things, and then it becomes something else. Even things that I've been able to do. But, dude, the politics and the Biden and the Trump and dude, I cannot. It's such a sinkhole for what it is we do long term, dude.
That is such a display of restraint because I think, money is one thing, but attention is another, right? And I think like attention is really the currency that social media trades in, and
Right.
it determines your value. I look at social media like the old stock tickers, like, oh, what's Sin trading at today, right? So it's like you're trading in social capital, and what an opportunity to boost your value by having something to say. And it was it was curated for you and your brand, and for you to not jump at that
Dude,
says more about where do you get that restraint from? Is that just like a black kid rolling through Dorchester just being like, yo, don't say nothing, and one of these micks is gonna fucking stab me or something?
It's super old school. So it started from my mother when she was sounding like, okay, there's a few things you don't talk about at the table, the dinner table. You don't talk about no money, you don't talk about no politics, and you do your best not to talk about other people, right? So it sort of started there. But what was beautiful is watching all these other guys talk about that shit. And then they had nothing else to talk about. Whether it was, forgive me, the guy that was shot, and I believe he was shot from the pickup, with the shotgun. So there's that. I've seen a lot of people do things in that. The George Floyd people, I've seen a lot of people do that. Dude, it's really just sticking in my lane. If I wasn't that guy from the beginning, how the fuck tomorrow I'm wearing this new hat? Like, fuck you. That means, I was fraud the whole time or looking for an opportunity the whole time. When I see something, if it doesn't align 100% with what I'm doing, I'm just not doing it. And you can call it restraint. I just think it's smart business. Don't get into those sinkholes, those potholes that you can't get out of. You can't get out of them, dude. I've seen the ones that went hardcore Trump or hardcore against Biden or hardcore Biden. Like, you're actually putting your resources, your energy, your future plans into someone you've never met, never gonna meet, and don't really know what gets these guys up in the morning. I don't want to be that. I'm going to do that for myself, period.
So what's the future like? Because you don't go with the tides. You get to set the sails of the ship, right? Which I think is the really interesting part, because so many brands, companies, personalities, it's all commentating now, but like they're not commentating on themselves. They're like the video inside a video feature in Instagram now. When I see someone else's face talking over someone else's face, I'm like, if you aren't ready to be that face in real life, talking shit in front of someone else's face, don't do it. But you have the reins, right? Like you're at the wheel, and no trade winds are going to blow you off course. So then what's the course?
Well, so I'm in Boston. I've been here about 3 months. My father had a stroke. It's really what they call a subdural hematoma or something like that. He ended up falling. So if he's been here, he's had 2 craniotomies in the last 2 months. So I'm just making sure my mom is good. Visit him today, make sure he's good, or just try to get used to who he is now instead of who he used to be. So I found myself in my hometown, looking around. Hey, what y'all up to? Y'all might need a little bit of this in your everyday life. So it's finding how good I really am in the town that I grew up in. So I've got some hooks into Harvard. I've got some hooks outside of MIT. I've got some hooks into my main hometown, which is Acton. And then I have a little bit of hook in one of the more richer towns, which was Sudbury, where I went to high school. So what you're going to see is the future. And the future will be, I did what I could for 25 years in Harlem, 15 years teaching. I went to after schools, I went to vocational schools, I went to high schools, and I did what I could to teach fitness and nutrition and that, and do what I could to change that landscape. So I'm here now, and I've got 25 years of different types of knowledge and 15 in one particular industry. Let's see what damage we could do out here. Let's plant a root or two and see if it'll grow. But It's always being in the right time and thinking the right way. And the right way for me is, I keep it Black Sabbath, dude. I keep it Ozzy. I keep it Tupac. I don't try to get too creative with shit. I don't even know who the latest guys are. I just stay with my little lane, and it's keep it white, keep it black, and let's keep us together, dude.
That's incredible. Do you feel like, I mean, are you a fate person? Do you feel like going back home was like, was this destined?
What?
Was this predetermined?
Of
Well,
course.
yeah,
Of
okay, all right.
course. Of course. It's the proof will be in the pudding. The proof will not be in what I feel, esoterically why I'm here, right? But the proof will be how deep can I make those roots? Am I going to be able to present at Harvard? Will I be able to present at MIT? Will I be able to grow my business as is in my hometown, which is still maybe 5% black? Maybe. I saw a black mailman. Whoa. But let's see. Did I learn anything? Can I give back to where I came from? Do I have that?
So the guy you can't see on my producer Kyle, we've known each other. We're from the same hometown. We've known each other. How long have we known each other for? 20 years, 25 years, 20 years. And it's something that we talk about our hometown all the time. And I'm always curious because I always ask myself, is what I'm seeing as different or the same actually different and the same in the place that I grew up in and go back to? Or is it just me seeing things that are different and the same in myself? How is it? What's it like now to go home? What do you notice different or the same about the place? Or what can you recognize as like, oh, you know what? This was probably always like this, but I'm just seeing it through a more experienced eye or more experienced lens or a different lens or
Such a great question. Such a great question. Um, Lack of, let's say, diversity. I hate this. Such a fucking bastardized word, right? So there's no black-owned businesses. I think I actually saw one. There's a black-owned restaurant, I believe, in my hometown, and I went there and I met the co-owners and stuff. So some businesses they're still kind of stuck in those same things. Let's cook you a good meal. Let's cut your hair. Let's shuck and jive and dance and make you happy. I've tried 4 or 5 different ways to figure out how to do the business plan because my hometown, their center of town is lacking anything. Forget diversity, they're lacking almost anything. So, they've given me some offers. So while I'm sitting down thinking about the floor plan of the retail space, what am I going to put where? What am I going to do? Who am I going to challenge? What am I going to? It's more looking like almost like an after school, dude, where I've got chess. We're playing chess, we're playing Stratego, we're playing like strategic games. We're putting our phones at the door. We're not thinking about, who's texting me or what new Instagram thing is happening. That'll always be there. So as I sit down and figure out what's the best way to put those thoughts into paper and present them as a business, I'm in my head thinking about what's the best way to present myself now that I've gone through these different types of changes and I see what's behind the curtain. Most people will never see, dude. Never see. And the question you had asked earlier about, you know, corporations and interacting and stuff like that, they're not much different than any other person, let's say on Instagram or having a job. Like what they expose themselves to, they're smart about. What they expose themselves to, they're educated. They haven't been dealing with, diversity in the way that I have for the last 15 years. So my eyes are just a little different. And when I gave them advice and I said, well, let's do this versus that, instantly, oh, right, makes sense. Got it. Thank you for that. And I almost thought I was talking myself into some executive position there at Puma because the way that I was guiding them wasn't just, through my stuff. It was, okay, do this on social media, do this with this guy, do this, do this, do this. So there's that. In terms of what I see now, it's, still a lack of diversity. Not much has changed. I see more faces. I see more black faces, more, I think, black families. And they've opened that up for most people, which is cool. But, there's an opportunity, a golden opportunity if done right, dude. Just imagine me in the fucking mall, dude. Fuck Zoomez. Look at fucking AfroBrutality in the mall. Dude, that's where I'm going towards. That's what I want, dude.
Did you ever think this is where you'd be? Like full circle back in the hometown kind of take in the worldly experience of, going to Texas, going to Harlem, going through being this social commentator, and then bringing it back to the burbs of Boston and
Fuck no, dude.
trying to
Fuck
sin it up a
no.
little bit.
Fuck no. I never thought I would be here driving through my hometown every day, dude. Never. Not like this. Not like this. So it's more of a blessing than a curse, but the curse will be on them because I pass all kinds of Black Lives Matter signs, and sometimes I want to go knock on the door like, hey,
Oh, jeez.
I'm here. I matter.
Not exactly your welcome wagon. Jeez. Holy. Well, Sim Martinez, man.
I'm definitely going to hold
Go.
people accountable, dude. I'm definitely going to hold people accountable, including myself. So, absolutely.
I think that's the message, man. I think that was one of the reasons I asked about posting for yourself. And that's a trend that I see in like the messaging through AfroBrutality, through obviously like the Sim Martinez Instagram page, is that idea of like a self, like accountability, responsibility. That's a vein that I see come through a lot in the stuff that you've been putting out since I started following you. And that's something that a message that I've heard, and I always associate with the brand AfroBrutality. So
Thank you,
more
man.
of that, man. I'm
Thank you,
excited
man.
for you. I'm happy to finally get to connect, dude.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
definitely,
make
dude.
my way out to the burbs in Boston and just see you lecturing at Harvard. But
Oh shit! There
real
you go.
quick,
Calling it, claiming it, calling it, claiming it.
speak it into action. Real quick, where Instagram, I already talked about the handles. We'll put it all in the show notes. But people keeping tabs on you, where's the best place to do it?
Mr. Sin, that's SYN, and then of course AfroBrutality. I own everything, Twitter, blah blah blah, whatever. So whenever you see that word,
Dude,
you're gonna see me.
thank you so much for your time, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate the
dude.
patience. I appreciate you
Thank
making
you,
this
man.
happen. Yeah, we'll
Appreciate you, man.
see you soon.
Definitely.